welcome everybody. My name is Nell and I'm the Thatcher Gallery Manager. And Glory Simmons is also here, the Director of the Thatcher Gallery. And we're happy to welcome you to the opening event for this exhibition, Porous, New Works by Jonathon, who is here with us today, and he's going to speak about his artwork. And the exhibition is up through the full semester. It closes December 16th, so I encourage all of you to use the space throughout the semester. As you'll see when we go out there, it's an inviting space to be in right now. There's lots of nice seating, so please take advantage of it while this artwork is up. And before we begin the tour, I'm going to just give you a little bit of background on our artist, and then he will be speaking about the work, and you're welcome to ask questions at the end of the tour, because I know some of you particularly will be interested, since you're in a sculpture class, about his process and his work. So as you'll see when we move up to the terrace, Jonathon makes both what we would kind of consider fine art, and then also pieces that are more functional in nature, but are just as equally considered and compelling. He said that the porous interchange between furniture and art is really what has inspired this exhibition, and it's something that he is continuing to explore in his process. And he'll talk about that more, but before he does, I'm just going to give you a short bio. A graduate of the Rhode Island School of Design, Jonathon Anzalone apprenticed for 3 years with the New England furniture maker Peter Marquette, during which time woodworking became a passion that supported his art making. After moving to the Bay Area, Jonathon co-founded Anzalone Farms, a studio committed to creating unique objects and installations that erase distinctions between functional and non-functional objects in residential and gallery spaces. He currently works independently, maintaining a workshop exploring the boundaries and intersections between furniture and art. All right, so I'm going to hand it over to Jonathon. He's going to say a little bit now about this piece and anything you want to share just in general about the exhibition, and then we're all going to travel together to the sculpture terrace and walk through the rest of his work, and then we'll have a little time for Q&A and a reception of food afterwards.
It's nice to be with you all. This is actually the first piece I made for the show, and it was a response to, I was looking through my notebooks, and I was thinking about an artist, Bill Walton, and I wrote down porous boundaries between painting and sculpture. And that certainly includes furniture, but this was a piece that was very much about that for me. This was a painting that I had made. It was intended to hang on the wall, and it was certainly sensitive to light, to location. It works with reflected color, and my goal was to make a sculpture with it and hang it as a stabile so it could be seen in the round and be affected by the light. This was a found pedestal from a scrap pile. I do a lot of work with byproducts from my workshop and byproducts from other operations. And that piece was preserved just the way it is. It had that soft earth in it, which to me just kind of begged for intervention to kind of use. And so that was kind of the dialogue behind this piece. So it talked to me about the title and the intention of the show, which was very much about creating this interactive space for me to explore painting and sculpture and furniture and how they all coexist. My process and approach to all of them and how similar it is. So I'd be happy to talk about each piece as we kind of walk through, and I certainly encourage questions. It doesn't have to be at the end. It could be an open dialogue, as we're making our way through. If you have any thoughts or questions about the work, please feel free to bring that up.
Your question? Yeah. Well, you put it between, or I assume that you were the one who was in charge of picking where things were, and you put it under these arches that kind of frames it. And I'm sure it looks really different than it did when you're making it in your studio with this around it. Do you consider the arches to kind of interplay in it? Why did you make that choice?
This piece I did intend for this spot because it was the only piece that I didn't want outside of the elements. It's a little more delicate. It has silver leaf, and the sandstone color spoke to this base. So I did intend this piece from the start to be here. I admired this arch. I wanted to activate it a little bit. I wanted it to frame the artwork. I always wanted to engage with the skylight and create some kind of connection through color, pattern. The rest of the work, I had a sense of where it would go on the rooftop, but it was much more, I got up there and just kind of moved things around. But yeah, this is the only thing that I did kind of notice. Any other questions?
All right, let's have the kids.
All the parts that come from are being included, which is the this little distribution on the right is all the parts to make it white. And I've been experimenting with my studio work, my more two-dimensional paintings, with working with these particles, sourcing sands and different particles from the beach, and joining them to these topographic panels. These were the first pieces that I made where I was thinking about them as sculpture. They've all been works that hung on the wall, and I've been really excited about the color and the texture. So this is somewhat of an experiment. I didn't really have high expectations, but I feel like it opened a new direction for me that I'm excited to explore. These are the first 3 pieces I made. And again, I felt like I had nothing to lose because they were just the offcuts from pieces that I was intending to make and preserve in their natural material. And the way I make these is I cover them with thick layers of latex house paint, just exterior house paint. Maybe 3 to 4 layers, sand them, and get them all sealed. And then the final layer I put on real thick and sift. This is sand from Point Reyes, National Seashore. Some of these I actually made out there on the beach, which was very pleasant. Great studio. And I again intended to show these with the pieces that they came from. I thought that could be an interesting dialogue. And I was, always thought about this space as the arena for kind of creating that juxtaposition, but it never worked. I just couldn't get them to, what I thought they would become. It just never felt successful. I liked that one. I was excited about this one. Then I was playing with this one, and I couldn't figure out how to make it work, and I got kind of frustrated, and I threw them aside, and I just stacked them in that orientation. All right, you could say, you're out, you're out, you're out. And when I stacked them, I stepped back, and I was like, oh wow, I like that. Brought it back, and that was how that one landed. So those are certainly the things I welcome in my process, whether it be making art or installing art. There's so much that happens that's unexpected. This is all such, the context is relative, materials are relative, you have all those expectations and anticipations, but then it's nice to have that open dialogue with material, with the site. That was a lot of this exhibition for me. I was very pleased with the way this material looked with this concrete squares and slates. Again, I didn't really intend that to happen, things like this. That. I didn't really think about that, but so I think this is a whole new body of work that I'll be starting to think about in the future. These are all these are not joined, so they have the ability to be reorganized. I like that about sculpture. And this flexibility. New compositions and forms. Different elements, right? Work.
So there's solid wood on the inside?
They are, yeah. They're all Monterey cypress. And I'll point out what they came from.
I have a question actually. So you were talking about how some of it kind of happens accidentally. And I was just wondering, this is kind of very open-ended and subjective, and I was kind of wondering from your point of view, what do you think is the difference between just actually stacking them for storage purposes or leaving them aside, but then also maybe the same position is actually an art piece? Does that make sense?
Yeah, I think when I was kind of frustrated at that moment, it was an act of letting go and losing control. So I was pleased with that, but just as an example, these pieces, it would go here, now it would go there, but I didn't, that didn't do it for me, you know, so but I like that, you know, I just like how it felt, it's like shifts, I like the lines, and so I was just gonna let this one go, and so I wasn't considering it, you know, so I just kind of put it aside, and that one too I put aside, and so there's something about, I think, letting go when you're not trying to land something successfully that enables something else to happen, and you could easily not see that, or you could have a pace that enables you to always consider accidents and chance, and I try and maintain that in my process. I might not even stack it the same way. Might be better or worse. Any other
There's something really
questions or
fun
thoughts?
about using a wedge shape in combination because it expands out as you stack it in ways that are unexpected when you see just the single unit. So,
And then this one, I was always pleased with that form. I had it stacked outside before I covered it in sand, and I just always thought I would join it so it was permanent. And that was a challenge, just thinking about how that form would join. And this is something I do enjoy, that challenge of joining disparate materials, and you know, that's kind of the furniture side of me. Like, I enjoy making connections, I enjoy juxtapositions, but this one was curious because there's a lot of space there, you know, that I wanted to preserve. So maybe the first two would be easy, but then the next two, it's like you only have that meat in the front here to make a good, strong connection with the center, and you know, I didn't want to cut off any light that comes through. So it took me a while to be comfortable saying it doesn't need to be. You know, and that's kind of an act of letting go in itself, because then it's going to always be different. But you know, once I made that decision, I'm actually very happy. Has been somewhat of a problem child in this exhibition, but in a really good way and in an informative way. I was making some tabletop stabiles. I have the very first one on that table. You can see it that I made, along with some other models that I'll discuss further. But I like, again, that idea of hanging a painting essentially from a solid base, and that to me was that porous boundary between painting and sculpture. I've for a while been interested in stained glass, but I have no experience with stained glass. This was one of the first pieces I just started to explore painting plexiglass as a, you know, a translucent material where color could come through. Scaling up one of those stabiles from having a small metal wire to these flexible wooden arms. This is Ipe, which is a really strong, Amazon hardwood, just highly resistant to decay, interlocking grain, so it has a lot of structural flex. And this redwood base, again from a scrap pile from a very large milling operation that was redwood. It was discarded for whatever reason, and you know, again, I could just take it in and really appreciate it for its inherent qualities. And this one started as a square, then it was a diamond, and that didn't work. And then eventually I took the square or the diamond and I cut it into a circle, and I was much happier with how that felt in space. It was in my backyard for a few weeks and was just fine without this tether and anchor. And then we brought it on the rooftop and it just took off, you know, just all over, forward, back. You could see, like, with very little wind, how much of the sail this little thing becomes. Initially I had it anchored into a crack, and I had a brick that kind of disguised that connection. Eventually it kind of worked its way free and bounced the brick for a while until it shattered, and that's the mark it left. So this is the latest revision, cinder block, which I really like the way it looks. I mean, it speaks to the squares of the plexi. And believe it or not, it actually did roll this cinder block. So there might be a third or fourth in the next 4 months. But I'd like to explore this form more. I still really enjoy these hanging paintings, how they exist in space, the movement. They have a personality. I would prefer it to not have any tether at all, just to be a form. If it was indoors, it could, and then it really feels like subtle drafts, and it just has a constant bounce, which I think is ideal for me. But there's something about this that I think is worth considering, how this could exist outdoors. It's a great opportunity to work through it.
I have a question. I think as art students, when we're making art, and especially sculpture, we're not thinking about where our piece is going to be. How often when you're making stuff, are you really thinking about where you're going to be putting it? Is that something that you're always considering, or are you just making things and not really thinking about if it's going to be outside or inside or in a huge space or small space?
Yeah, that's a great question. And I'm often always making things, and then I don't consider where they're going to go. Most of the time I don't consider them being outdoors unless it's a commissioned piece or I know where it's going. All this work was deliberately made for this site, so I certainly was considering that. All the material I used are materials that are resistant to decay, and material that silvers out very quickly, doesn't rot, so that's something I considered, so they could have a future life outdoors. But I think that's the beauty of exhibiting artwork for me, is actually being able to get things outside the studio and see them in a different context and respond to them with almost that like objective vision, which is so hard to get in your own space. Things look so different. And then also, like a piece like this, I thought would be just fine without a tether. I really did. I even had it outdoors for a while, and Lori kept saying like, no, it's intense, like really intense up there. And I was like, yeah, I know, it's fine. But it's, so there's always lots to learn, and it's nice to be open to like changes.
Were you thinking about the church at all with the glass?
I was not.
Plexiglass?
No, the only piece that I was thinking about the church was this line of beach plastic, it was somewhat of an afterthought. It was after visiting this site maybe 3 or 4 times, just looking at that blank wall, and it was just asking for something to activate that wall, because it just felt. But it was also for me wanting. I realized the first time I came up, I didn't really take those spires in, and I wanted to do something to bring our eyes up to make sure you see that. That's a 33-foot line of beach plastic. When I first moved here, I got really excited about all the plastic that was washing up on the ocean shore, and of course it's upsetting, and it speaks a lot about our dependence on plastic and single-use materials and how much waste. But there's also a beauty to it that I was trying to see. When I was walking, I was seeing these like colored specks in this natural environment with these natural palette. And I was making collages with the plastic where I was just laying out grids to kind of just see the forms, speak about where they came from, more just thinking about a visual experience, color, form, shape. At the end of, I think, 2 years, I had a bin of every piece that didn't make the cut for a collage, and that was actually, I think, just 2 years of a collection. And so it was fun to kind of document it in a line. I started thinking about children's toys when my sister and brother had their first child, and I was making these color wheels, ways for them to just get to know color. And have a good, wholesome wooden toy. For this exhibition, I thought it was a great opportunity to kind of scale it up. And that's what inspired this piece here. I rarely think bigger is better. Like, I like small work, I like intimate work, but I think there's something about, especially an environment like this, that enables you to work bigger, and I think that's a great opportunity and something worth considering and taking advantage of, just going through the technical side of scaling something up, but also, how something holds up at a different scale is something that's always informative to me. Big paintings are, like, a good small painting is as good as a good big painting, I believe, but you could work through things a lot faster, at a larger scale. Everything's expanded, so it's, initially I thought this piece was going to be just like this, exist on the ground, and I like the idea of everyone being able to play with it, move it around, make their own compositions, but it was so much heavier than I thought. 14 2x4s, 12 and actually I was meeting with Joe here, and he said, I think you should make this a little easier for everyone to kind of play with, and so that's kind of started thinking about this base, and still having it be on a fixed point, but enabling the different compositions. So I encourage you to play around with My wife is a jeweler, and she's taught me a lot of very simple light metal work, and it's really fun to make this rivet together. That's a 1-inch brass tube that we made a tube rivet. That was a fun evening. I've been really enjoying the shadows that become part of the work when you're bringing in this environment. That's something you don't always get in the studio or the gallery setting, and how it changes throughout the day. That was first inspired by an Austrian architect that I've been excited about, Frederick Unterwasser, because of these incredible, sturdy, colorful columns. These were colorful at one point. I ended up painting them white when I came up here because it was just a little too active. But I wanted to create a place to just sit and look at the sun, thinking about shadows. These woven panels I really enjoy making as just these structural forms that are very simple. They're all made from byproducts from essentially like the table saw ripped in. And they're definitely satisfying forms to make and very structurally sound.
I noticed you use like a lot of trees, full-size trees. How do you work with something that size, wood that's that big?
A lot of this stuff is essentially like ready-made from the large mill that I would go buy a slab for a tabletop. They have a scrap pile, and a lot of this stuff I actually find. I crop often with a chainsaw, and that's, again, when you have these marks that are made by such big band saws or large chainsaws, it's not a time for me to think fussy or at a small scale, so that's a time when I really think about the chainsaw. So the pyramid behind this structure here came from a block of cypress that I carved with. The coffee table top is a piece of deodar cedar, and again, scrap pile. That square was, a larger piece that I cropped into a square. This bench is a new design that I was thinking about for this exhibition, and these legs that just slide on and it's adjustable, and then it backs flat. Something I've been interested for a while. I can see that breaks down into flat and interlocking parts. This here is a pretty good example of a lot of stuff that, this is a eucalyptus that, at one point was probably flat and kind of took off into that shape. And, the last thing I want to do is try and flatten that at this point, but just kind of respecting the inherent qualities of how these materials age and weather over time. Some of these, they start off as squares and carve some shapes out of it, and then they'll weather into a nice silver gray. They'll crack, they'll chuck, and just welcome all that. So I see these very much as sculptural forms, but they're also very practical. You can sit on them, they're side tables.
I have a question. When you delivered this, you had like colorful posts, and then you painted them white.
Yeah.
Maybe some words about how like that color needed to be canceled because of this, or why, kind of that decision you're making about bringing color to the front or like setting color back.
In the studio, this is my favorite part, is the colored post. Something I tickled for days and was super excited about, that relationship, and it felt essential to that piece. But that's looking at it as like a woody form in a studio surrounded by wood, and everything else that was bright and vibrant was not in context with it. When I brought it up here, I was sitting on the bench back in the corner, and I was looking at it through the color wheel, and I was enjoying the color wheel and kind of finding this green within the color wheel. And then I just kept thinking, like, could you just stop? Like, it's too much going on. You're demanding too much of attention. And I was most excited about the turn forms and wanting to call attention to the subtle gradations in the turn forms. So that's why I brought it back to white. And in a different context, I would certainly consider repainting it or sanding the white off and seeing what happens. But yeah, in this context, it just felt like I also wanted to bring attention to the color of the wood, which I think there's a lot of subtle colors in there that when everything else was so bright, that became very gray.
I have a question about that piece as well.
Yeah.
About the form of the post. So those weren't ready made. Those were carved by yourself. Those columns on either side.
Those are turned on a lathe in three parts.
Okay. So can you talk about like the choice to make them sort of mismatched, and which one you made first, and how you decided to make one couple that's not exactly the same?
Yeah, so Hundertwasser, the architect that, is thinking about this piece, he just celebrated everything that was organic and tried to bring life and the organic into his architecture. So it was not about things being straight, it was not about things being square, symmetrical, even. So that was the starting point. It was just more about shape, form, color. And then from there, it's more about balancing. So that was a lot of the struggle when I was painting it, was trying to balance out in a regular form with color. Part of me just gets curious too about if I'm not happy with it and the colors seem too much, what would it look like white? And that's often what I say to myself in the studio. I'm like, what if I try this, or what would this look like? And to me, if you're not happy, you might as well go for it and try it out. And, that's going to probably open a new door. Not to say you could always bring it back, but if you're not happy with it, just keep going. Yeah, I don't like, try not to settle, it's good enough, or, I'd rather push it to the point where I lose it.
I have a question about how did you come up with the shape? I know you find the wood, pieces of wood.
Yeah.
How did you come up with the base of the
Sure.
top of the shape?
Yeah, so that top I didn't change at all. I had this form made. I like that front live edge talked to the curve, that radius. And then I started just propping that piece up on different blocks. I put it on a star. I put it on a rectangle. I put it on a milk crate. I was like, ooh, it's getting closer. I like just that solid form. And found this piece of pine, cut it into a square, and lived with it for a while. And just, that's a lot of kind of just, try and listen to the piece, look at it, see how I feel about it, and I do a lot of trial and error. I also do make models. This is not a time for a model for me. It's more of a time for just that haptic engagement where I just keep trying things on for size. And, I think you have a bench that has 4 legs. So I didn't want 4 legs as in some of these tables here because it just felt like too many legs. I felt a solid form. I was thinking about the circulation entering and exiting this space and creating room.
And it creates a nice balance.
Everything was so light that I felt like an anchor. So I'm always juggling, it seems, heavy to light, fast to slow, thick to thin, organic to geometric. I'm kind of always thinking about how to balance things out. Kind of form.
Guest interaction pieces, things around is that like I'm already I want to sit on this one.
Yeah, I hope so. I really do. I
I'm
think
like
that's.
not sure, and then I'm thinking, well, maybe I would move it every so often.
Yeah.
Do you think they'll do that kind of thing? Do you
I
like
hope
that?
so.
Movies? Like, that these were with your artists? Have it out.
I think in a gallery setting, it's kind of like look what you not touch.
Yeah.
But up here, it was my intent was so different that I wanted this interactive space, and I trust one to respect the work and its inherent qualities enough. But yeah, you could.
He's sitting.
I actually want things to circulate a little bit. I wouldn't mind if anyone wanted to rearrange my sand sculptures, or. But if you were to pull on one of those plants too hard, it would probably break. So. But I would encourage you to touch it and feel the texture. And I was, really thinking about engaging all the senses with this show, and thinking it's not just about sight, but feeling and sound, touch. Just kind of engage all. So yeah, that's really encouraging. Good move.
You're so used to not touching stuff. It's attempting to do it.
I want to make this place feel more inviting. A place to sit, eat, I don't mind just throw your lunch on the table. I did that the other day.
Like table, what do you
Fine.
do about that?
No, that's what it's here for.
Okay.
The plants were a really fun addition for me. That was the first kind of idea that I had for this space when I came up here was, this space is kind of like a blank slate, which is wonderful for me coming into it, but all these planters weren't planted, and I've been making these wooden plants for a while. Enjoying working with them as they kind of simulate the experience of a real plant. I think of them as drought-resistant plants that nice to live with, and so I had this idea to make these larger wooden plants for these planters. Initially, I thought I'd paint them, and again, that was kind of my initial intent, was to bring color and make it green and full of life. But again, I often go back to respecting the inherent qualities within the material, and all these materials are going to silver out, and paint's going to feel and fade. It's like almost a maintenance issue, whereas these could just be. So I look forward to seeing how they change. But those are all joined to pieces of 1-inch plywood that's set onto the soil and then covered with stones from concrete, Rodeo Beach. It's really beautiful. Good touch. Some of these pieces, so you see the second one in, the cattails, those leaves, I steam bend. And it's a real simple process. I could do it actually in the kitchen with a tea kettle and a PVC tube. And just let it sit and steam for hours. And then it relaxes all the fibers. You can wood at that dimension, kind of bend, fold, twist. Essentially dries the way you plant it. And then in this context where you're getting moisture and sun, they start to relax, so they get even more organic. Which is something I'm enjoying, like balance and the right stuff. Take off. So they're all changing a little bit, that one's settling. All these benches or coffee tables are scrap pile. So just really enjoy working with material that was discarded and maybe they have no market value or they're too challenging to work with or they're not going to yield enough to make it worth their while, and they're just such great references to the tree and a really exciting moment, and they again just for me that it's a problem to solve. How do you kind of present these in a way that make them feel approachable and considered and functional? So these benches and coffee tables are really like simple examples of that. The piece right in the center is just a ready-made bench. Love the tension, that release. There's so much there for me from a kind of sculptural standpoint that is successful that I didn't have to do, and it's really nice just to kind of offer that, take it out of context. When that's in the dirt, covered in mud, you'll never appreciate it, but with some space around it, cleaned up, you get to really see this material that's so full of tension, and when it dries, when that releases, and you get this beautiful curve on the backside and this splitting of the fibers, it speaks a lot about that material. Wood and how it dries, how it changes.
How many different places do you go to find these pieces of wood? Like how many different suppliers or stores?
Probably like 3 to 5. Not too many. Yeah, there's one up north that is like just so rich. It's hard to get to, but if I have material that I'm buying for a furniture project, you need to have access to the scrap pile. I couldn't just say, hey, can I come up and run this through the scrap pile? Other places, if you're just shopping for lumber and you see a pile of rips, like that dimension, you could just ask and maybe they'll say, I can take it. My own shop yields a lot of byproducts, on a smaller scale. But yeah, that's a continuous source of inspiration, and it keeps kind of fueling a creative process. Because you don't know what you're going to find. The beach is another. You find a lot. Any other overall thoughts?
Excuse me, question. Where did you get what where to find part of tree? This people? Because it's age and that's how
Yeah, they're old pieces of
What
cedar.
you find this?
This is from a mill up north in Tamales that works with a lot of local, native, old growth trees. So pretty much all the work I do, I work with native materials, so it's all local, it's all reclaimed, and that doesn't mean it had a previous life, but it could be an old tree that fell in a storm. That was an old cedar tree that
It's
beautiful
incredible.
piece. Yeah, and it smells really good.
100 and more age.
Yes.
Yeah, are you relative doing some working with wood? Yeah.
I have a shop making furniture.
Carpenter.
Carpenter? Yeah, so I make furniture. I'm a woodworker, so that blends into sculpture and painting.
Incredible.
Yeah, the material is.
You have to
I agree.
When did you start?
What's that?
When did you start sculpting?
Years ago, or 9 years ago, Joe and I started making furniture together. And that, I think, was the start of me thinking more sculpturally. Before that, I really thought of myself as a painter. Thought through two-dimensional work that was going to go on the wall. And I did more carpentry work, construction, that essentially supported that habit. When I started making furniture, I started seeing the furniture very much like sculpture. when I made a piece of sculpture, even furniture, even though it had function, it was a very similar dialogue. I would look at it, I would change things, modify things. Very similar to if I would just make a sculpture for the sake of sculpture. So that was a gradual process, and I think that's when my painting started getting more dimensional. As more furniture was being made, there was more little bits and pieces and byproducts from that process that would start making my paintings more dimensional, more topographical. And now I'm starting to think about the paintings more in the round, more sculpture. So yeah, it's not very long, but it's been a gradual transition over the last 10 years.
Still painting?
Yeah, still making paintings too.
What about it?
It looks like stone, yeah. It's elm. Also an old tree. Yeah, it's very heavy. It's also wet. It's got a lot of water, moisture in it. So it'll get lighter as it dries. Most of this work, I think the only pieces that were made before was the one painting that's hanging under the arch and that string of beach plastic. I think everything else was made in the last 2 months or so very quickly. Yeah. Part of that is because I think about it for a while. I need to kind of put aside and carve out the time to just put. It's actually more efficient for me to just transition the whole shop into working towards this exhibition and taking away at little things here and there while I make furniture. So I decided to just have a bit more of a focused approach. So yeah, I'd say the majority of it was made 2 months before.
Do you feel like you work better under a deadline, or when you just have, free reign to do what you want at the time that you want?
I'm not one, I don't think, to procrastinate, to say like I need that deadline to get things done, but I work best when I'm able to put all my focus into the work and not feel like I'm bouncing around too much. When I'm making furniture or there's more commissioned work that's taking up the majority of the shop, artwork's always being made. It's just a little more on the sidelines, more after work, kind of during, or little arrangements, thinking about things. But when I'm thinking about shows, I like to just carve out the time and really just put my head down and focus. That seems to be when things happen. Really get into it. And, just have that level of focus. And it also keeps me over the whole shop, so everything starts circulating. When things start cross-pollinating, one thing influences another. I rarely work on some of this.
I was going to ask something about the interactivity with your work. You were saying that this exhibition wanted people to really interact with some of the stuff. And even after you told us, I feel like people were still hesitant to even touch things or sit on stuff.
Sure.
So how would you go about making it more open for people who want to interact with it and know that they can? Especially someone was saying how you don't want to touch art in a space, How do you get people to really want to go and interact with your stuff?
No, I don't know. It's a good question. I would, I think encouraging it anytime I can, having, you guys being the ones that say oh, cool, let's go have lunch up there. Nell and Gloria have been great about talking about the work under that kind of umbrella. I don't know. I don't like signs. Signs that say do not touch or do touch. I kind of trust people to feel things out, and I feel like if you see a bench or a surface in front of a bench, I hope you feel comfortable. I hope the work doesn't look precious. Every time I come up, I move this into a different configuration, so I hope that encourages it. But yeah, I don't know how. I certainly thought about that. And one of the ways I was hoping it would invite that kind of activity was have some small pieces like these around that could circulate. But I think there's definitely improvement there. How things get just a little more interactive.
Sometimes it could be in the title.
The title, yeah.
That's kind of, it's too much.
Or in the opening,
sure. I think there could be something out front in the hallway, you know, I think that could be a good idea. Or to just a little bit about my intent and my hopes for this thing. Yeah, 'cause I mean, a day like this, my goal is to get people out here, have them lunch, or have them eat.
What happens in the rainstorm?
Everything should be fine. I mean, it's definitely, yeah, everything could get wet.
See what it does.
Exactly.
What uses a table? Toys.
Toys, those are models. Those are, I often make little models, like, you know, this before this.
Oh.
So you'll see a little model for
Yes,
that
yes,
bench.
yes. I get it. Looks like toys.
Each of these works would just say you drop Melissa's price.
You know, the sand pieces, I would say, are where I'm excited to kind of keep exploring. That's also, they were some of the last pieces I made, and now I'm already starting to make a few more. So I'm excited about that. The other piece I'm excited about, which I haven't spoke about yet, is that little twine piece that wraps over that curved form. That's the first piece I made like that. It's, you know, thinking about paintings that could be flexible and rolled up, I think is another way of really blurring that line between painting and sculpture. So I think I'll be making more work like that, and I'd be happy to talk about that piece a little more. What's that?
The little bottle right there, the one that's
Oh
like,
yeah,
plugged
that's in
yeah.
parts. Yeah, why don't we go?
Broken.
It's already broken.
Excuse me.
This is a pyramid that you see in the back corner. And these are the parts that, you know, the kind of byproducts of cutting that pyramid out. Those are toys I was initially thinking about, but
So for all of your designs, you'd make them all on a smaller scale before you make them into a bigger scale?
not all of them. No, but if I'm making, you know, a dining table, that's a new design that I haven't made before, it's certainly efficient for me to make it at that scale model to kind of feel it out, see how much I like it, make tweaks and modifications before I scale it up. So yeah, not always. This is that twine form that, you know, I like this idea of paintings that could be draped, you know, whether it be, you know, they could interact with the architecture. So this is the first piece I made, and I hope to make more. I was also, you know, I like the idea that they can be rolled for storage or for shipping. And these are byproducts. My helper, my employee in the shop, and also good friend, is a great wood turner. So anytime he's making table legs, he has to take a square, make it an octagon before it goes on the lathe, and so there's kind of an ongoing supply of these triangles that he gets, and so he's just dropping off in the shop, and it's a great opportunity to work on, you know, thinking about that form. And so I made this piece, and then I was thinking about how this could be a great opportunity to make some kind of sling furniture. If I scaled everything up and had real sturdy rope, they could be kind of hammock style or kind of draped seating, benches. So I think I'm going to keep exploring this form as kind of something new and I'm excited about. That was, you know, the model for this piece here.
Looks like that. See.
Are you ever like scared that some of your sculptures or artworks aren't going to break, like either from the wind or like from people playing with it, or is it like you said earlier, like once you're done with it, you just let go and see what happens with it?
I definitely let go, and I'm not. I wouldn't be scared. I hope it doesn't hurt anyone if that happens. I don't get real precious with my work. I really enjoy making it. I really enjoy looking at it, sharing it, the experience. But I'm not really fussy about things. Like, you know, if one were to interact with something irresponsible and it broke, like that's not my concern at all. You do learn a lot just through, you know, how, you know, you learn a lot when things break. Just their structural limitations. But yeah, this piece I kind of hope doesn't break because I don't have any more Ipe. So then I would have to figure out like what the next material is. And it was interesting, I tried steel, and steel was actually like too stiff or too flexible in kinks. There might be types of steel that I'm not aware of. But I did try many different species for that arm. I'm kind of surprised this one hasn't broke. Like, it's just been subject to so much torquing, and it may in 3 months. But if it does, it's just an opportunity to learn more.
Do you have kids?
No.
Because I see like this stuff and the wedge pieces and everything, and I think, oh my god, my kids would be so excited to play with this stuff, and you would have no problem with them assuming that they could interact with it. It would be hard to not let them interact with it. So I mean, these have that appeal that gets beyond any, you know, art historical knowledge. There's a strong sense of play with a lot of them.
I appreciate that, and I like that, and I try and welcome that in my process. Like, I think of myself as playing with these materials all day long. You know, I really don't take it too seriously, although I'm very serious about what I make. I just try and, you know, try and listen as much as I want to like tell, and these materials have qualities that I really appreciate. These were initially made as toys, actually, and you know, something like this I made for my nephew, and the first thing he did was, oh, a helicopter, and just threw it across the room. I think he broke it. Other pieces like that, you know, will never be. After I made the tabletop sculpture, I made this one thinking more about, again, like that blurry line between sculpture and furniture. You know, I thought of this as this tabletop sculpture, which is also a toy. But if it were at this scale or a little bit bigger, it's also a chair. And I like that about it. You know, it could exist in space as a sculpture, but then it's a great like seating surface. You know, and a seating surface that enables movement and is kind of a sense of balance. So that's something I'd like to explore more with my furniture. I didn't talk about that piece at all. That's a piece that I thought of as a turbine. I was hoping it would move more with the wind, but it really doesn't. You know, that form is something that I've always been attracted to, like old TV antennas, whatever that is, transmission towers, telephone poles. You know, these kind of architectural moments in the landscape that I was kind of thinking about this as this kind of network of signals and color, and you know, pairing that with a more organic form. And I was, yeah, like I said, hoping that would become a turbine and kind of twist and really activate the shadows on the ground. But it seems like there's a little too much flex in the grass and not enough surface area or too much friction. So that's something I'd like to work through in the future. If I were to make an outdoor piece that was going to be in the wind, I'd love for it to spin. But I'm okay with it just as is. But I would love for it to spin.
This will be the last question, and then if you have others, you can help us talk to them during the reception. Go ahead.
You said that this was the first time using stained glass?
Well, I've never done any stained glass. This is, it's not, I mean, I was thinking about stained glass, I was inspired by stained glass, but those are just plexiglass squares that I painted with acrylic paint, drilled 4 holes in them and tacked them to the wood. So it's not stained glass in any traditional sense, but it's something I would love to explore in the future.
So with that and the ring that you might do in your writing, is there anything else you're going to incorporate into your sculpture that you haven't done yet, but like you want to try like really soon?
Well, I'm going to keep exploring this material here, the sand. And, you know, I do enjoy getting those like delicate metalwork connections. It's wonderful to collaborate with Raisa, and I think that will continue. I'd love to actually work with stained glass, like actual glass. I think that's a wonderful way to think about painting and its relationship to architecture and how close those could become. So yeah, that's certainly something that I hope. You know, it feels a little less accessible to me. Like I feel like there's a lot I need to learn or study rather than just like going out and about. Whereas this one, I could just kind of play around with it and kind of get to know the experience of light and color. Thank you all. I'm here if you guys have any other questions or thoughts. So.